And next thing you do is then go to your record button.
It says preparing to live stream the meeting. So do I wait for that and then record until it?
No, just hit record.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you got record on?
And because I can see you.
All right. And mine already says recording. I didn't hit record.
No, go ahead and hit record anyway.
I can't. It's either stop or pause.
Because I hit record on the cloud. It says we're recording.
Yeah.
Unhit your record.
Unhit your record.
Okay.
All right.
Hit
Should
your
I hit
record.
mine now?
Try your record.
All right. I can record on the computer to the cloud. I'm recording on my computer.
Right.
All right. I'm good.
Now you try to record. Hit record again.
Yep.
I
Are you
have
done,
to
Glenn?
record first.
So everybody has to do it before you hit the cloud button.
I have to start record before you do. Okay.
We're live on YouTube right now.
That's okay. We're going
Private. Nobody can see it.
We're going to cut this part out. Ready?
Yep.
And welcome back to another episode. We've had so much fun. We're sorry we missed you guys last time, but every once in a while, life happens to us. So we're back again, and we've got so much. This is going to be a super, super full week. April is almost over. I know it doesn't sound like it, but it is when I looked at my schedule. So we're going to head off, and we're going to start with our tea. And Melinda has I don't know what in her cup, but I've got the same thing in mine. So she's going to tell us what we got.
So today's tea of the week is cannabis tea. To start off our April month, 420, woohoo. So this I actually got from Magic Treasures online, located in Massachusetts, from our dear friend Aisha, who works there. I ordered it online. And it actually has it has some cannabis in it, but it also has echinacea in it and lemon peel. It has a lot of really good stuff in it that's really good for antioxidants and immunity. And that's actually what it's for, really, is immunity.
Well, I'm jealous because I ordered mine and I'm still waiting on it because I ordered after you.
You'll get it soon, and you won't be disappointed. But and of course, so this one in particular focuses on immunity. They also have one that is for moon cycle tea. So that's really good for women's health and, that time of the month. But
Melinda, is this legal everywhere?
so it's very small amounts. So it's not anything that's going to, it doesn't do anything but relax me. It really doesn't feel any different than if you had chamomile, honestly. But you're getting the benefits of the plant.
And it is legal for everybody to order.
It's on the website. Yes, it's on the website. Yes.
There you go. That was a question because I know a lot of states, there's a big controversy with what they're allowing in cannabis and all that kind of crazy.
That's only, from what I understand, that's only if it's in bulk, like pure cannabis, over a certain amount. If it's something that's in a blend, such as this, they're already in tea bags with the string on it, with the honey sticks in the little bag, and it comes with the little crystal. I got a tiger's eye, but yeah, so no, nothing like that. But it's actually very yummy. And of course, with my allergies, I could always use immunity boosters. So it's actually really good. It comes with 5 honey sticks. I don't even need the honey sticks, honestly, because it has enough ingredients. I really, really enjoy it. But of course, you can always add that sweetness. I typically don't need a lot of sweet for my herbal teas. I can just drink them as they are, unless it's this, yeah, or my listeners know me and black licorice and licorice root, so I have to have my honey. But yeah, so just to go over some of the medicinal aspects, like we always like to do with the teas, where do I begin? So honestly, I'm such a huge advocate for cannabis because you can research. There's so many benefits. even with CBD without the THC, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I mean, it's good for stress relief, anxiety, insomnia, pain. People are using it for cancer when they're going through chemo. It's an appetite stimulant. It's because people are losing weight. I mean, there's so many things. Parkinson's, it's helping people with epilepsy. It's helping with children that have a lot of
If
issues.
you have lupus or fibro,
Hmm.
that's another avenue that you can look at too for some relief.
Oh yeah, PTSD. I mean, the list goes on. Honestly, I mean, migraines, depression, the whole thing. And you don't get the side effects. Now, of course, ask your doctor, as we always say. And everybody's body is different. So just like anything else, my reaction is might be different than someone else's reaction. But it's
I
not.
have to say, with a lot of people, they don't understand that, but because it's a drug. If you go to a bar,
Don't get me started.
okay, and you
I mean, you are, because we're going to talk about that too. But
right, but if you go to a nightclub and you have a drink, it's going to affect you a certain way. It's
right.
going to affect the person next to you maybe differently than
Oh
you.
yeah.
We all know those people that one glass of wine and they're on the floor, and the
Mhm.
others like two bottles later and they're still standing.
And a lot of people, I mean, yes, it does have to do with your weight and stuff like. I mean, yes, of course, that has stuff to do with it. But then there's also people that could be the same weight and they're still a lightweight. So I mean, yes, to your point, everybody reacts differently, and always check and make sure. Just like all of the herbs that we've talked about, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily. But I can say with confidence in for myself, because I can only speak for myself. I I mean, it's the bee's knees. There's no side effects, you know, other than happiness and pain relief and all good side effects. You certainly don't get the long list that you hear in the commercials of all the pharmaceuticals that your your
Yeah,
doctor
like
is prescribing,
take this and you will die.
and that are always worse than the thing you're treating. So it's like,
You could
but
develop a severe allergic reaction and die, and you're like going, "Oh my god!"
right. So I mean, it's really, it's really good stuff. I wanted to talk about this starting our April show out because it's National Cannabis Month, 420 holiday. So I thought that would be fun to talk about. As far as magical, you can use it really, again, it's intention. So if you're looking it up, you're not going to find a ton like you would on like mugwort or rose hips, or, you can look on Pinterest and you'll find a bunch. I mean, but just from what I've researched and what I know, just using it myself, it's very good for when you're doing intentions or spell work for like peace rituals. I mean, if you think about it, even stereotypically, I mean, people are usually chill and unified and peace, love, and, all that. But so it's good for like positivity, unity, peace, and things like that, love, those type of positive aspects,
Would it
purification.
also
You
be
can
good
even
for
say
healing?
yes, because if you think about it, it has the medicinal aspect. So you can also use it in magical workings. If you're using it for healing or spell for healing, you could use it in the same way. And a lot of people don't realize you can also smudge with cannabis.
Oh, really? I did not
Yeah.
know.
It's up to the person's preference whether or not they feel like they're wasting it rather than, consuming it. But
Yeah,
you
I
can
can see that fight going on in your brain right now.
you can do it though. You can. It's very, and what we're going to be talking about tonight, or my part of what I'll be talking about tonight, is some of the history on cannabis, because it's a very spiritual practice and it has been for thousands and thousands and thousands of
Now,
years.
would this be something that you could use for a psychic tea?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm just
Absolutely.
thinking you need to sometimes, I mean, our world is so stressful that sometimes we need to, I don't know, wind down to get to our psychic level anymore.
The way that I always look at it, when you're thinking about cannabis, I mean, even if you have to sort of like dumb it down for lack of a better term, if you think about the stereotypes of cannabis, even like how you're laid back, you're chill, you're mellow. If you think of it sort of as that as a reminder, so anything having to do with like meditation, third eye
Right.
chakra, you you know what it's really good for? Shadow work.
Really?
Shadow. Oh yes. The really good thing, and when you meditate, when you consume and then you meditate, or you do like a past life or a soul retrieval or a past life regression, I mean, it really does have the ability to take you to a different level. And it's not anything scary. It's not anything, you really are connecting and on a much deeper level with your higher self. It's just allowing you easier access to, in my point of view,
Right.
it's allowing you easier access, because me personally, I work full time, I have kids running around here, TV's I mean, it's crazy. Meditating's not easy for me. I mean, I try to meditate in the morning. I got a 4-year-old walking in here, 10 minutes into it, and I'm just like, I even off of Amazon bought door hangers that says meditation in progress and told my kids, if this is on the door, do not come in mommy's room. I mean,
So they
so
have to come in, right, to check to see if if the thing hanging on there really meant for them not to
right,
come in.
really meant it. So that being said, for people, and I have squirrel brain, because like I'll start meditating and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I make that doctor's appointment or did I rearrange that day? That's how my brain, I have a hard time just calming down. And so for me, a lot of times guided meditations will help me, because then I can focus on the voice and the guidance. So that usually really
Well, I
helps
was
me.
asking because seriously, even at my age, I don't have children running around, but you've got a million little squirrels up in your head running on the little wheels.
Hmm.
And for me to really meditate, I come home from work. I'm an accountant, so I come home like, yes, I'm going to
Yeah.
kill people. So it's like I have to have that decompress, but it takes
Right.
a long time.
Yeah.
You don't decompress in 5 minutes. So
No.
I'm thinking if I came home, ate, made the tea, then by that point I should be able to. And that's why I was asking about a psychic tea, because some of the psychic teas out there, um, I have lupus. I have contraindications, which means a lot of stuff I cannot use.
Right.
Um, and obviously, it's with a lot of the psychic stuff. So I have to be really, really picky about, and it's terrible because I see psychic tea. No, I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have that. So by the time I
Yep.
get done taking all the little stuff out, I can't have, there's nothing left that I can have.
Right. Right.
So that's why I was asking about that as a psychic tea, because for me, I can do the cannabis.
Hmm.
And if it's going to bring me down enough, like de-stress me from
Oh yeah.
all day, then
Well, and
that's
it
the
also
perfect psychic
depends.
tea.
Oh yeah, and it also is going to depend. It's such a complex plant, right? It's
Mhm.
got so many things, you know, and people are learning more and more about it. It used to just be, well, first of all, I mean, it it never was even cannabis. It was never, all the fun strains that are out there, which I love, by the way. I love all the names and all the cutesy,
I can't
all
keep.
the stuff. But so it's evolved so much with a lot of progress that we've had. We still have a long way to go. We do have a long way to go, but we're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely.
But
Um,
we're de-stressing with the cannabis. Then we have the echinacea to build up our immune system behind that. So
right.
de-stressing actually saves your cells, believe it or not. When you stress, you
Oh,
burn out you burn cells, you burn brain cells, you actually burn off your body cells in stress.
And like we talked back in the shadow, I think it was the shadow work where we were talking about that mind body spirit connection and how one is connected to the other. So if you're stressed constantly, you're going to at some point make yourself physically sick. And you can see it time and time again in people. And that's why self-care is so important. So if you're needing to, so back to my point, it's such a complex plant, there, a lot of times when you go nowadays, especially, where it's not legal in your state, or let's just say medical, like here in Florida, um, you you will have your choice of like sativa, hybrid, and indica. So it depends on what you're wanting out of it. And what I mean by that is, so a sativa is going to have you more alert, more productive, more creative, more going, an indica, which is such an easy way to remember. You know what I'm going to say?
I know.
Into couch. It means you're into couch. You are couch locked. Usually, of course, all depending on how much you have. But what that is so sativa is more of like the head high, which is keeping you productive and creative. So it's up here. And the indica is the body high. So if you are wanting to meditate, I would probably say, and of course, again, I'm not a doctor, do your research, talk to your doctor. But in my opinion, like if I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do an indica because it's going to relax my whole body. And it's also good for insomnia. So if you have things like insomnia, which I have very badly, it's going to help with that. So typically, if you have insomnia, that's going to be something that you take at night. You don't want to take that if you're like during
in the car to drive down to the beach.
and you shouldn't definitely not be driving when you're under the influence. We would make that clear. But so for something like meditating, an indica would be good because there's been plenty of times where I'm like, I have meditated and I'll have like it completely dark in my room with just a black light on, and I'll be listening to like, a meditation or just like nature sounds or binaural beats or something. And I feel like I'm sinking into my bed, but it's such a great calming feeling. And I can actually meditate and I can focus on nothing else but just being present. And it's such a great feeling that you just don't get, you don't get anywhere. I'm not like seeing, I'm not seeing like gnomes and trolls and it's not like psychedelics in that sense.
No green fairies.
No, those are different, and there's nothing wrong with any of those, but this is a different plant here. And then a hybrid is going to be obviously a combination of the two, where it's going to give you a little bit of both that head and body, which you can also do for meditation.
The hybrid, where the sativa is I'm on the money. My hybrid is more of my relaxing, not my sleeping, but more of my wind down. It's almost like the glass of wine at the end of the day kind of feeling, because you're alert, but you're finally starting to de-stress. Your body's finally saying, okay, we're going to get rid of all this tension, your muscles, we're going to relax you. But you're very alert when that happens. So that hybrid is a little different, but I find that better for meditation for me, because I'm clear, but I'm rested. I'm not rested, de-stressed, I think is a better term.
Yeah, and that's why I said a hybrid would be a good one too, because it's both. Your mind is relaxed and so is your body. So it would be perfect. And there's so many different things that you don't realize it can really help in your spiritual and magical life. But it really does. I don't want to give too much away because it's going to be a future show, but there really is,
touch on it.
there's just a lot. You can go on YouTube and there are really amazing videos of people doing yoga. I mean, yoga with cannabis is a thing. I mean, it is a thing. It's really, people are really opening up to it not being a drug. You know what I mean? It's a
I
plant.
think we're taking away and I hate to say it, guys, growing up, my age group, it was Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke. That was,
Still my favorite movie.
yeah, that is everybody's, when you say,
Okay. So
go,
for you, it's Cheech and Chong. For my generation, it was Half Baked with with yeah, so same difference,
so
but I
yeah,
love
but you grow up with that, and that's where your mind is, because that's your first,
right.
it's your first foray into it in a non-group environment. You go to the movies, you watch Up in Smoke, you laugh about it. Yeah, we had a good time. But you keep that in the back of your head, and that becomes your stereotypical stoner. And
Mhm.
then you start actually, okay, you start getting old. Don't do that
Mhm.
if you can help it. And your body starts breaking down. I mean, I'm not lying, it breaks down. And
Yeah.
then you start understanding, there's so many drugs out there for everything. But
Right.
you have to understand what works for you. Like you keep saying, talk to your doctors, ask those silly questions. But when you find something that works, and especially at my age, nothing
Mhm.
works. Your body does not work. You get up in the morning and it's like, really, are we going through this
Angry at
again?
you. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and you guys laugh at me. Um, I've been told I'm a high energy person. I have to be. I run around like a crazy person all the time. But you do have those periods where my body, I'm getting older. I do have underlying conditions. So it's like, okay, I have to be careful with what I do. I have to watch things. But then you get like, well, I want to go there and I want to do this. And it's like, but my
Mhm.
body's like, not
Yeah.
happening.
You
If
need
you
to chill.
can medicate the body, not to go beyond, but just to get you from one place to the other, you have to start deciding what you're going to put in your body. And like you
Well,
said, it is mind, body, and soul. Can you justify the chemicals in your
mhm.
body? Can you relate to those chemicals? And how are those chemicals going to ultimately be with you? There are certain drugs that build up in the liver over a period of time. You
Right.
have to have tests done to make
You
sure.
have to be careful even with ibuprofen and
Your
NSAIDs. You
stomach.
can't have too much of that because it thins the lining of your stomach, and that's an over the counter that anybody, it's just, we're so trained about certain things in our society that if we don't take the time to do the research ourselves, we don't know any better. We just don't know any
No.
better.
And
And like
I would tell everybody out there, be your own advocate, because no one is going to advocate for you at your doctor's office. Um,
no.
you sit there and the doctors, and I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of doctors, the only reason they know about the drugs they're prescribing is because those people have come into their office, the reps have, and they might have it on their pad, they might have a ruler, they might have a pen with a name on it. There are so many new drugs every day. There's no way a doctor can keep up with them. Let's be really, really frankly honest. So they're prescribing something they were told might help you.
I
So
had a friend tell me she was in nursing school, and the doctor that she worked with said he point blank told her, they do not teach us how to prevent illness in medical school. They only teach us how to treat it.
now, if you
So
go
that
back to
right there.
before all of this, when we were, hunter gatherers, if the shaman didn't keep you healthy, he did not get paid. Now,
Right.
think about that. You didn't
Mhm.
pay him if you were sick. You only paid him if you were healthy.
Right.
That was his whole job, was to keep your butt healthy. So when you look at this kind of thing, now you don't have a shaman to advocate for you. You don't have anybody who can, unless you have, like, I have a daughter who's got a mouth bigger than mine. So if I go to the doctor and she goes, trust me, he knows everything. But if you don't have somebody and you're going in, you really need to do just a little bit of research. Do not become a PhD in Google,
No.
but look at some of the stuff. I mean, you have to decide what side effects you're willing to put up with.
Yeah.
What are you
Well,
willing?
and just like with anything, if you're using it for medical purposes, it's going to take time for your body to, adapt to it, to build up a tolerance. You have to see, and also, again, it's so complex. So it depends on if that is something that you want to do for medical purposes. A gummy is going to be different than smoking a pipe, is going to be different
Yeah.
than having a brownie that you made homemade from concentrate, is going to be different from wax that you dabbed in it's so different. The potency is different. The duration is different. The onset is different. It's different. So that's what I'm saying. It's even the route you take it. It's just an experiment. You have to research, but if it's for yourself, and if you're not in a recreational state and you're in a medical state like we are, really, really do your research, because unfortunately, and I don't think this is a secret, we know how big pharma is. Don't get me started. But unfortunately, sadly, not all doctors are advocates for cannabis.
Right.
A lot of them are in it for the money, because they know that people are going to want their licenses. They're going to come to them. And I've seen it firsthand. I've heard it from other, clinics who are advocates, and that have seen it from primary care physicians. And it's really sad, because people need medicine, and they don't want to be on opioids, and they don't want side effects, and they don't want all these other things. But if your primary care doctor is telling you that they're going to charge you a crazy amount for a consultation for your medical marijuana license, and you don't know any better, how are you supposed to know that that's not the same thing anywhere you go? How are you supposed to know that if you go down the street to a clinic that's not necessarily your primary care doctor, but is an MD, you pay like your state license fee and whatever the doctor charges, which is far less than your primary did, and then you go once a year instead of every 2 months paying $200. I mean, that's also a facet people have to think about. It's really sad. It's really sad.
Well, the other thing you have to think about too, and financially, I mean, I'm coming into the age now where, we've got to watch our finances, because as we get older, your prescriptions can be 50% of your income.
Ugh.
And when and this is a reality for people my age, and I'm not exaggerating. Look at the numbers. Many people forgo eating in order to get their prescriptions because they are so expensive.
Right.
The only bad thing about the medical marijuana is it's not covered by any prescription plan yet.
And that is because it's still federally illegal.
It's still federally illegal. Now, you've got to weigh your options. If you're paying X number of dollars out anyway, and you've got side effects you can't deal with, then taking those dollars and turning them this way might be a better way for you to get through the issue that you're having. Always check with your doctor. Find a doctor. And this is what people don't understand. Doctors are people. They really are. They go to the bathroom like we do. So you have to look at them, because they're going to have their pros and their cons just like everybody else. If you're seeing a doctor who says, oh, never would I prescribe for that, and if you're thinking about it, then you're like, maybe I need to change primary care. Maybe I need to talk to a doctor who can talk to me. And you should do that for anything. If you don't agree with your doctor says, here, we're going to put you on this. Why? What's it going to
Right.
cost? What's it going to do? What's the side effects and why am I taking it? You need to
Right.
be your own advocate. And sometimes it's very difficult for people my age because we were taught doctors are one step below a God.
Hmm.
They
And
go to
you don't. And the older
never
folks usually
correct.
have the same doctor for like 30 years. You know, they
Right.
don't. They don't typically change it unless they move.
Right. And then the doctor gets to know you, so he's ignoring 90% of what you're saying. And I can tell this is a true story. My first husband's grandmother she always complained with her stomach, and we could never, yeah, we know. And let's be honest, she was an old lady. She lived by herself, so we thought it was a little bit of attention. Come to find out, she had ovarian cancer, and it had metastasized into her intestines. Now, she saw the same doctor for, I don't know, 30 years. Same
Hmm.
doctor. So here she's going to this doctor, and he's totally ignoring her because it's like, I've heard this for a year now. She got sick, collapsed. We had to take her to the hospital and come to find out she had cancer. He never suspected because he stopped listening.
Mm. Yeah, it's sad when that happens.
And I'm saying truly, if you go to your doctor for whatever reason and you don't feel like they're listening, they're paying attention, or they're not focused on what you feel is important, then you know
Mm.
what? Maybe it's time to go back and figure out who you need to see.
Yeah.
And that's
And
across the board for anything.
exactly. And I'm going to touch, so next week's episode, I'm going to be going more into medical um, aspects of cannabis. So tonight is history, but just to give you a teaser, I listened to a really great TED Talk. And I'm going to have the details more next week because I cannot recall her name at the moment. I'm sorry. But she was a doctor, and she did a TED Talk about how we have in our anatomy an endocannabinoid system that, you know, that are left out of health books. We're not taught this in school. So most people don't even know this about our own bodies. We're taught our integumentary system, our skin, our nervous system, our cardiovascular system. We learn all about that fun stuff. But there's a whole system in our body that we have that reacts to cannabis. And that's why it works so well with our bodies. And that's why our bodies react the way that it does, because we have receptors in our brains that respond to the cannabinoids in the plant. So when we consume it, it is reacting to our natural body system, and it is creating those changes.
So you mean to tell me that in my body is already pre-programmed to accept the cannabis into it?
Yes.
Okay. So
You have,
genetically, I'm programmed to take in cannabis.
yes, we have cannabinoid receptors in our brains that react to the molecules of
All
a
right.
cannabis.
You
I'm
have
going
to
to go into
explain
it
to
next week.
me.
I'm going to
Okay.
go into it next week. I
I
promise you.
know, but I have to know. This is my question because I mean, look, I was born in the 50s, so I'll give you that much of a clue. But we were always told, I mean, anybody watch Reefer Madness lately? That it
I was
was,
actually disappointed when I finally saw it. I thought it was going to be so much more outrageous than it was, and I was like, "This is what was. This is
yeah,
what it was."
that's what it was.
I thought it was
But
going to
you're
be way.
telling me that I'm already built and programmed to accept this into my body for my body to use as needed where it's needed. So it's
Yes.
already done up here. So all I have to do is put it in here and move on
Hmm.
from that point.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
And that's
I'm
why.
learning more and more every day. I will tell you,
That's why it. That's why it has the healing effects that it does.
because we're already
And
programmed.
and there's been zero, zero fatalities in the history of the plant. It has never ever been
Killed
a
it.
documented death, ever. Now, if you are caveat, if you're like doing stunts off the roof while you're high, that's a different story. That wasn't the plant, that was stupidity. So let's just be clear about that.
Let's separate stupidity from the plant. if
Right,
possible.
right. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, and and like I said, I'll get into it more next week with the statistics and things, but yeah, zero. And yes, we will talk more about that because I
I'm
was completely
interested
fascinated.
because all of these years now, I've been around Woodstock. Yes, I was there. Yes, I remember all that good stuff. No, I don't. But if I'm going to be honest with you guys, if anybody said they went to Woodstock and they remember it, they're lying through their teeth. No, but I mean, you get this in your mind. I mean, come on, let's look at it. You get Tommy Chong, let's be real, okay? You get Cheech Marin going, oh yeah, that kind of thing. But I'm I'm in the position of saying that it's not that way,
Yeah.
and our bodies are already set up for it. So, give me a little history about why we can't use it.
So, the history, and actually, there's a lot of good information. So, I found some of it on history.com. I found a couple of different sources, which history, if you go to history.com and you look up um, history of cannabis, there is like a little 3-minute video that shows an actual little clip of a film that was done in the 1930s that was made against prohibition and or for prohibition, excuse me, for cannabis. And I mean, I watched it, of course, and it has little like snippets of facts and things like that. And it was really interesting, but it was the facts laid over this ridiculous black and white film about,
Yeah.
Tommy got high with his friends and he wanted to murder his brother and or just dumb stuff like that. And it was like and Tommy almost died because he was out and he was high and he was figured out a new way to break Coke bottles, and he like smashed it on a windowsill and was drinking with broken shard, and he was chewing on shards of glass, and Tommy didn't even notice because he was hot. I mean, ridiculous, but that is what it was. So I'm gonna take us way, 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 way beyond that for just a little bit because it's very interesting. So the oldest known written record on cannabis comes from the Chinese emperor Shen Nung. And I'm probably mispronouncing this, but it's Nung, Nung, in 2727 BC. Now think about that for a second.
Yeah.
2727 BC. And he used it to prescribe cannabis-infused tea to help with treatment of gout, rheumatism, and even malaria. Even way, 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 way back then. So, most cultures did not grow the plant to get high. They used it for herbal medicines. And if you look at a lot of history, a lot of resources showed the Chinese emperor, they brought him up specifically. But when it comes to more records, a lot of it starts appearing in Asia around 500 BC. So there's like a big gap there.
Well, part of that gap is probably we haven't found what was written, or what was written has
Right.
fallen apart at this point.
Exactly. And so it originally evolved in Central Asia before it was introduced into Africa, Europe, and eventually the Americas. And it was so used for medicine, but then it was also the hemp fiber from the plant was used to make clothing, paper, sails for the boats, rope, and also the seeds were used as food.
The seeds.
So, yeah. the seeds.
Wow.
Hemp seeds.
I didn't know you could eat the seeds. I'm sorry.
So hemp seeds, you can, I mean, you could then, there's like some fiber in it and like some protein. It's not the same as if you like, if you had seeds that you were like growing a plant for consumption.
Right.
So it's different in that sense. Now, because it was a fast growing plant and it's very easy to cultivate, I think for a full grown plant, it really takes maybe, well, depending on climate and things like that, 4 to 6 months. And I mean like a 6 foot, depending on I mean, they can get really, really big, and so beautiful. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. And so it was actually widely grown throughout colonial America and at Spanish missions in the Southwest. And in the early 1600s, Virginia, Massachusetts, and Connecticut colonies required farmers to grow hemp at the time in the 1600s.
Okay, I'm going to ask because I heard a lot of stuff, growing up about the hemp plant, but that supposedly made the strongest rope that people could use.
Yes, that is what I've heard as well. And also, people have made their homes out of hemp, which is it's called hempcrete. You can look it up, and it is it's similar to concrete, but it's supposedly stronger than that. And I mean, it's supposed to be very like
So
legit,
we're talking the plant has 4 million uses. It's not just
basically.
for one thing.
It's not just for your body, mind, and soul. It's also for ropes and sailboats and clothes on your back. And a lot of people, the clothes on their back. I mean, people used it for all sorts of things to help with housing and farming and everything. So many things. And the hemp plants in the early days had very, very low. So it's called tetrahydrocannabinol. Cannabinol, which is known as THC. The chemical, and that's what gives you the mind altering or the high.
That's the high.
Yes. And so there's also some evidence that ancient cultures knew about the psychoactive properties of the cannabis plant, and some started planting varieties of the plant to actually produce higher levels of THC for use in religious ceremonies or healing practice. So here where comes in
Okay,
what we were
that's
talking
kind of like the peyote for the Native American. They used it for their
or
ceremonies.
yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Or like ayahuasca and the Amazon, things like that. And also something, and I've heard this before. So, there have been burned cannabis seeds that have been found in the graves of shamans in China and Siberia from as early as 500 BC.
Wow.
So they would use them for rituals, healings. It was, they would burn it at funeral rites and almost like a smudging as a blessing.
So it's kind of like an echinacea type thing that you can use for a million different things. Echinacea is like a basic immune system plant that uses everything.
And that's what I mean. It really is like in my opinion, like the Mecca. I mean, you can honestly use it for mind, body. I mean, spirit, because you can use it for spiritual aspects, medicinal aspects. I mean, and it's here in history. I mean, people have been doing the same thing for thousands of years for healings, for medicine, for food, for industry, building their communities, all sorts of stuff, to the point where the colonials were requiring the farmers to grow hemp. I mean, in the 1600s.
Did your teachings take you to anything what caused it to become illegal? Did you ever, because
I'm
I've
getting
heard
there.
stories and I'm not sure
I'm
what I've
getting
heard is right.
Yes, I'm getting there. So just a couple other neat things. So there was also, and I know I'm going to mess this up, and I'm sure Lord Don would know the correct way because I love how he just always rolls off the tongue with him. An ancient Greek historian named Herodotus. I don't know. It's Herodotus. Okay, yeah. Described as the Scythians, a large group of Iranian nomads in Central Asia. So he was said that inhaling the smoke from smoldering cannabis seeds and flowers to get high. So he was known as one. So again, finding more about the psychoactive effects. Now, a big thing is in the Middle East. It's a big thing in the Middle East. And this is why. So, and they will call it, I mean, it will have a lot of names. You'll hear it called, pot, reefer. I mean, it goes on. But hashish, which is a purified form of cannabis smoked with a pipe, was widely used throughout the Middle East and parts of Asia about 800 AD. Its rise in popularity actually came about with the spread of Islam because all of the substances were illegal in the Quran, but there was never mention of cannabis.
Right. No alcohol, no
Oh,
drugs, but
yep.
cannabis was never. Oh, that's interesting.
So it forbid alcohol and other intoxicating substances, but it never mentioned cannabis. So that's why it's such a big thing over there. Now, in the United States, marijuana was not widely used for recreational until the early 1900s. Now, what sort of came about introducing that was immigrants from Mexico coming to the United States because of the Mexican Revolution.
Right.
And that introduced recreational smoking to American culture. But because of massive unemployment and social unrest during the Great Depression and resentment of Mexican immigrants and public fear of the evil weed, as a result, this was the Prohibition era, which viewed all intoxicants. And by 1931, 29 states had outlawed cannabis. So, because of this. Now, in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 is what it's called. It was actually the first federal U.S. law to criminalize marijuana. So what it was, the act imposed an excise tax on the sale, possession, or transfer of all hemp products, effectively criminalizing all but industrial use of the plant when that went through. That was 1930. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. Now that's sort of what started it, but what really, really got things going into a nasty, ugly place was a little bit before that. So there was also an interesting story about that kind of ties into the act. So there was a 58-year-old farmer, Samuel Caldwell, and he was the first person prosecuted under the act. He was arrested for selling marijuana on October 2nd, 1937, just one day after the act was passed. And he was sentenced to 4 years of hard labor.
Can we say set up?
Right? So, and also, a lot of people don't realize, even with this, so again, going back, the Tax Act of 1937 didn't make it illegal. It made it so it did criminalize certain things recreationally, but it was still a part of the United States pharmacopoeia, um, and it would be prescribed as medicine until 1942. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know, before it was a red cross for the medical sign, it was actually a green cross. And it was adopted by the American Red Cross, which make it, when that came about, it made it red. But it used to be green that you see on all the hospitals and ERs and ambulances. It used to be a green cross, and that always interested me, being Wiccan and into my herbs and stuff. I mean, of course, I just loved that. I was like, yes, green, Mother Nature, rah. It's like, but and you could actually buy cannabis tinctures over the counter. I mean, at that time.
They
So,
prescribed a lot of that for women's ailments.
yeah,
So
until the 1930s. And then the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which was became produced or brought up by President Hoover himself, who familiarized himself. Oh, so that was the farmer who was arrested in the 1937. So that's when things started getting criminal. So what led to that, and is the infamous Ann Slinger. Harry Ann Slinger, sorry. I always call him Henry. In the 1920s, he was actually the first person ever appointed he was the first ever commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics.
FBN.
Yeah, at the time, which was created by Hoover, and he familiarized himself with all the politicians, with the celebrities. So he was kind of like a shoo-in. He was buddy with everybody at the time, this real, Washington insiders, the pharmacies, all of pharmaceutical industry. He had an in with all of these types, this hairy guy, right? So, he was kind of under the gun, and you'll see it a little bit. And I think it was even a little bit I don't know if it was in a different video or tied in with Reefer Madness somewhere, but how this came about was the prohibition of alcohol was failing.
Miserably.
Yes. And he was a part of that. So he was grasping at something,
Anything.
desperately. Exactly. Well, and because the original focus was on cocaine and heroin.
Which was very, very big in the port cities.
Right. Because at the time, it was during the era of prohibition. So as far as narcotics, they were focusing on cocaine and heroin. Well, the alcohol prohibition, we know what happened with that. So he was kind of under the gun and sort of panicking in a sense. So he's like, well, I got to figure something out. Like, what? I got to figure something out. And so to him, marijuana was the golden ticket. He was like, yes, I'm running with this. And he did. And what he did was, and it's really disgusting, and I've brought this up before, the whole reason it's illegal in our country is built on, and I'm not going to get political on the show, but on this topic, it's hard not to be political because the reason why it's illegal is political. So, I mean, it's politics, it's legalities. Mm-hmm. So you kind of can't not talk about it. He was a racist, and he used that to make it illegal, basically. He used the war on drugs, and he used, because the Mexican immigrants brought it to the Americas, marijuana comes from Mexico. That's where we get that term from. But that's not what, I mean, in ancient China, they never called it marijuana. I mean, that came from Mexico. So he basically what he did with, so we know the war on drugs. So that was Harry Anslinger, and he basically produced it off of marijuana because he needed something. So he propped cannabis up as a dangerous substance, associating cannabis use with and violence in order to criminalize it. So, and he was known as quoted saying, "You smoke a joint and you're likely to kill your brother." So,
You're likely to kill the Twinkies.
Right.
And you will eat Twinkies if you're going to smoke marijuana. You will eat all the Doritos. I don't think you're going to kill your brother.
So he basically,
villainized it.
Yeah, he completely villainized it. He associated it with violence. Then he started associating it with race. I mean, it was, you can look him up, and there's a ton of stuff you will find. And even then, the so fast forwarding to 1970, as the war on drugs continued, the Controlled Substances Act came into play of 1970. This is where, so Ann Slinger was so there's a distinction, right? So, and this is what we're still dealing with today. So even back in the 30s, we're still fighting this fight today. The difference is Ann Slinger's thing was criminalizing it, right? So people getting arrested and thrown into jail for it. How many times have you seen a Cops episode where they're getting pulled over for weed? You know what I mean?
Yeah, a half an ounce of weed. Yeah.
Right. Not even.
Take over the world with a half an ounce of weed.
Right. So that's Ann Slinger's thing. Now, the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 is what made it federally illegal and what scheduled it as a Scheduled 1 drug, which is the same as heroin,
yeah,
LSD, and ecstasy, and also has no medical uses and has a high potential for abuse, is what was said.
All righty then. We can see where that just doesn't even come close to fitting in.
Not at all. And it was signed by none other than Richard Nixon.
Tricky Dick had a part of that, huh? I remember.
Oh yeah, he was president. He was president, and he signed it. He repealed the Marijuana Tax Act and listed marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug. It was identified in the anti-drug programs like DARE. We all remember the DARE program in school.
Oh, yes.
Drug abuse resistance education, and that is where you heard the term the gateway drug.
Love it.
Yep. If you smoke marijuana, you're gonna be hooked on crack and heroin and everything under the sun, and you're gonna die. You know, and they even started bringing those commercials back of like, oh my gosh, they brought it back like last year or the year before, and it was the funniest thing I ever saw in my life. It was so funny. It was great entertainment. It was like two girls sitting on the couch, like girlfriends, like teenagers or early 20s. And she's like, Becky, and she's high. And then she just starts like melting into the couch into a puddle. And then she's like, and then it's like, don't be like Becky. You know, it's like, and she was pissed because she couldn't like hang out with her friend and eat popcorn and watch a movie because her friend was high. And then there was like another commercial where the mom was so upset because her son died from marijuana. I mean, and this was stuff like as late as the 90s, these commercials.
I have to ask now, see, I came in on the other end of things back in the 70s. I was in college. Don't judge. I know everybody's like, you were in college in the 70s? Yes, I was. We touched on it a little bit because I was in a business course and we were discussing the lobbyists and how lobbyists help get things passed or stopped. So we were focused on a lobbyist, and understanding where do lobbyists fit in the political system.
Mhm.
And our instructor brought up the fact that the Hearst family owned millions and millions of acres of forest, and they did newspapers. So they needed the forest to chop down to make the newspaper. Okay, it
Mhm.
makes sense. But they owned all this forest land. And my understanding, if I remember it right, give me a little break here, if you planted marijuana in the same area that you planted trees in, the same, dimensions, you would get 4 times as much paper out of the marijuana as you would get out of the trees and the logs.
Yep.
And they lobbied, the Hearst family paid lobbyists to tout how harmful marijuana was as a drug,
Mhm.
stop it from being planted and harvested for paper because they owned all the forestry.
Yep.
So my instructor was telling us it was like one of the biggest successful lobbyist things that happened because the Hearst family was funneling, hundreds of millions of dollars into this because they owned all this forest land, and
Right.
didn't want the marijuana planted because it would basically nullify their forest because they
Yeah.
get 4 times as much. So the trees would be 4 times as expensive. So they wouldn't get the value out of it. And the forest.
Exactly.
Now, did you come across that, or did I remember that incorrectly?
No, I've heard that story. I didn't come across it in my research this time because I'm of the way that I was kind of doing my timeline. But yeah, I've heard that story as well. And sort of going back to your point and talking about growing, just briefly touching on that subject, and talking about how we were briefly talking about the medical earlier. It's you can't grow them in even medical states.
Yes, you're
As part of your garden or your medicine, and that's another part of the flaw because they're not the state's not going to make all that money if you're growing your own stuff.
right.
But the recreational play, I mean, because let's face it, if you make it recreational, a lot of people are gonna I won't say
Yeah, a
everyone,
lot of
a lot
people.
of people, you know what I mean? So they kind of it makes up for it in a sense. But going back to the whole yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like that's the joke. And everyone's like, "Oh, it's so bad for you. It kills your brain cells." I mean, how many times have you heard that? You're going to be lose all your brain cells and be dumb. And
Yeah,
then you have the stereotype of the stoner. But going to the war on drugs in 1972, so that was passed in 1970. In 1972, a report from the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse, also known as the Schaefer Commission, released a report titled Marijuana: A Signal of Misunderstanding. The report recommended partial prohibition and lower penalties for possession of small amounts of marijuana. Nixon and other government officials ignored the report's findings. So, going back to your point, it's just because they signed this act, it's all politics. That's the only reason why it's legal. There's no evidence that it's bad for you. And as a matter of fact, there was something that I found. Let me see. I think there was a. mm, I think that was on my other paper, but there was a medical commission that um, basically came out and said that there is no evidence that went to the Nixon and said there's no medical evidence that this is bad.
That
that this
everything
is
we've heard is not true.
right. And then, like I said, Ann Slinger was using the thing of race to criminalize it, and then Nixon is using this to say that it's a Schedule One drug, and it's
Right. And
so.
then you've got the Hearst family paying lobbyists to stop it from being planted for paper. We're not even talking drug here. We're talking
Right.
freaking paper.
Yep.
And the
And
big thing that I took from that was it did paper, it made clothes, it made, I mean, they went through a list like this long of everything you could use it for. And the whole point it boiled down to, my instructor said, was it's a really useful plant, so we had to get rid of it.
yeah, so going to your point, so the industrial hemp continued to be grown in the United States throughout World War II. When its domestic cultivation was encouraged after the Philippines fell to Japanese forces. And the reason why that made a difference is because the Philippines was a very huge resource for hemp, imported hemp fiber.
Oh,
And
perfect
the
growing.
Yeah. And so the last U.S. hemp fields were planted in Wisconsin in 1957. Now, more recently, laws have been passed by the Commissioner of Agriculture where farmers can start planting hemp again. So it's state specific still. It's not passed everywhere. But so just to skip forward a little bit here. So California, in 1996 it was the Compassionate Use Act of 1996 became the first state to legalize marijuana for medicinal use by people with severe or chronic illnesses. So that's when you go back to they would prescribe it to cancer patients.
Cancer, glaucoma. There was a couple things that were really big when it first started taking hold. I know the glaucoma patients, it was very important for them.
Yes, it was. And so that was some progress. And then Washington, D.C., 29 states, and the U.S. territories of Guam and Puerto Rico allowed the use of cannabis for limited medical purposes. Fast forwarding even further, June 2019, 11 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized marijuana for recreational use. So again, some progress, still have a lot more to go. I'm not knocking it. I'm very happy with what's happening, but we still have a long way to go. Colorado and Washington became the first states to do so in 2012.
Right.
Colorado. A lot
And
of people think California, but it was Colorado.
my understanding is Colorado has actually taken in so much finances that they're in the green, they're in, well, what we would call the black if you're an accountant, but they're doing very well statewide
Yeah,
because it's
it's
bringing in
really
so much income.
it's really helped them with, schools and city restructure and whatever, upkeep needs to be done or repair, how you think about city budgets and things like that.
Infrastructure, yeah.
Right. And so not only that, but then the statistics were coming out saying, hey, guess what? Because the big argument was if this becomes legal, all of our kids are going to be doing it. That was a huge argument that kids are going to have access to it, that they're going to think, especially with the gummies and the brownies. And there's a lot of stuff out there. And don't get me wrong. I mean, lollipops, there's 1,500,000 things you could think of. And that was some views. Oh, well, if this is legal, I mean, you can look up news articles. People were like, oh, this is going to be in my kid's Halloween bucket. It was hysteria. It was nuts.
Nobody's going to give that away for Halloween. Trust and believe.
And that more kids are going to be dropping out of school and getting high and being stoned and all this stuff. And what happened was there were reports that came out. There was no reports, evidence of any adolescent consumption. And as a matter of fact, the use of marijuana in teenagers went down when it became legal.
Because it's legal now. It's no fun.
Right. So exactly. It's like, what are we going to do to get in trouble?
Who cares now?
Yeah, it's legal. But, and there's not. Mm-hmm.
is now alcohol has been legal for millions of years. It's always been legal.
Mm-hmm.
My curiosity is, have they studied alcohol compared to marijuana? Because I used to bartend, and I'm going to be honest with you. Some people get a few drinks in them and they become a whole different person.
Yeah. No.
I've never seen that with anybody who does pot.
And
And
that totally goes against the Ann Slinger narrative, right?
right.
Because
And that's what I'm thinking. Because let me tell you, when I'm tending bar, you give me a pothead who comes in, I'm going to give him a bag of Doritos and sit him at that table, and he ain't going to move. Where I got this
I,
over here trying to take me out at the bar, and I physically have to put this guy out of the bar. So I'm like going, who do I want to deal with? Give me a
right.
pothead any day.
Was there, I mean, well, you were there. Was there a lot of rageaholics at Woodstock? I mean, they were all
We had
smoking.
that many people
You're not angry. You want to
in.
like just hug everybody and world peace. I
Right.
mean,
In that
honestly,
area, you had millions of people, and there were no fights. There were nothing major happened other than the rain in the mud. But I'm saying nothing like where they had the skirmishes and the issues. And I'm going to tell you honestly, it's where they had the alcohol.
yeah. But people don't want to acknowledge. I don't understand with the evidence because, like I said, after that was passed, after it was criminalized and taken out of pharmaceutical, the medical association came forward. It was the American Medical Association of something. I thought I made a note of it, but I didn't. Um, so I don't remember the exact name, but they came out and made a report saying there's no findings of this. And back to your point, a big struggle for the scientists that are advocates right now, the thing that they're fighting with is because it's federally illegal, there's not, they don't have ways to do the research because they're not getting the funding.
Right. They're not getting the funding because it's illegal and they can't fund it.
Yep. And they don't have a way to get funded. So it's ridiculous. It's insanity. And no matter how much evidence, I mean, there's good evidence out there. I mean, there's enough evidence, in my opinion. I mean, look, you have video evidence of a kid having violent seizures. You give them a little tiny, pea-sized thing of Rick Simpson oil, which is a concentrate, very high potency concentrate of THC, and it's the only thing that gives them relief. I mean, there was a local girl here that moved away from Florida, and before the medical was passed, and actually during this time, it was the first time on the ballot, and then it didn't go through the first time. But this was during that time, the first time.
Yeah.
And she was begging and pleading on the news. Oh my gosh, it was so heartbreaking. And her daughter's name was Charlotte. And she, because it didn't pass, she was traveling to Colorado for her daughter's treatments.
Wow.
And she lived here in Jacksonville. And and then when it didn't pass, I think they finally moved to Colorado because it wasn't worth their daughter's life,
Yeah.
But you know what the coolest thing is? There is I don't know if it's a company or a brand of cannabis, and by brand I mean like strain. Like if you cultivate plants, they have different strains and names and things like that. That do different things. They have different terpenes. Again, very complex plant. I'm throwing words that you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but we'll get to that. So they do a little bit different things, but there is a line because of that little girl. It's called Charlotte's Web, and it's about her. So, I mean, I just look at stuff like that and I look at what research there is, and it's mind blowing to me that today in 2021, it's still such a struggle to get,
When I look at my home state of West Virginia and
hmm
hillbilly heroin, we'll be honest with it, and I look at the devastation and the towns that have actually shut down, whole towns are now closed because everybody got addicted.
yeah.
Enough people got addicted in the town that the town could no longer function. Now, you look at something like that, and then you look at something like making marijuana legal. It should be a no-brainer.
I
It really
just feel like
should be.
we could be using our energy on so much bigger things. And when it comes to something about healthcare, I mean, again, not trying to be political, but it's just like it goes back to the whole why what if I choose, and I don't like taking pills, even Tylenol. I've never liked to take. I don't know. I just never liked it. Even as a kid, I don't. If I have a headache, I'll try to listen to Zen music or I just don't. I mean, I will if I have to, but I don't really have a reason. I just never liked it. And so it's like if I have something that's going to take away my migraine, my back pain from two kids and being overweight and three car accidents and one being with a semi truck, and you know what I mean? It's like, and my anxiety and my depression and my bad knee that I got one time in roller derby practice. I mean, it's like, and I'm only 34, but it's like, hey, if this one thing can help all of that and I'm in a good mood, I'm for it. It's like
Well, I grant you, and I mean, let's look at America's infrastructure and people. The age of the average American is going up. Um,
oh,
we're not birthing as many children as we used to. So
right,
the aging population, and I can say that is one of them. As we get older, your body breaks down. There's just no way
right.
around that. And all the little stuff that starts to break down and you start to have issues with, you're presented with, you can take these pills that you can get addicted to. Thank you.
Right.
Or what are you going to do? You're going to suffer. So you're like in that, what are you going to do? You're going to take all of these pills that you don't eat sometimes because you got to pay for your pills.
Mhm.
Or can you look at something that will help alleviate? And I'm not talking about making your life 100% better. Let's be perfectly honest. But when
Oh
you
yeah.
get up in the morning and you put your feet on the ground and you hurt, to get that relief to get through part of the day. And I mean, my routine was to take a painkiller, an
hmm
anti inflammatory, 2 hours later, another painkiller, 4 hours later, another anti inflammatory. And we're not even talking about the rest of the stuff I take.
Yeah.
So it's okay, what am I, how rich is my life right now?
Right.
What am I missing?
I
What
think
am
that's
I
what
not
the
enjoying?
yeah, I think that's what the biggest I think that's what so many people don't understand or don't see that are against it. They don't see what the trade off is. They don't realize that, they're just so set in this thinking of it being a drug. Well, okay, but you call your prescriptions are drugs, you go to the
Exactly.
drugstore, but you're just twisting it to fit your narrative, you know what I mean? It's like how is it better that someone is still suffering really with
Right.
side effects and going broke in the process, and also whose business is it what I do to medically take care of myself? So why is this a
Right.
political issue?
Well,
If I want to grow cannabis plants next to my tomatoes and cultivate my own medicine just like I would grow any other herb in my apothecary for my herbal medicines that I take for anything else. Why can't I do that? It's just there's too many hands in the cookie jar, and it it just all
It makes
political.
sense to do what Colorado did and just make it legal to the effect that, because if you're taking all of this painkillers, and I'll tell you, I've been on them for quite a number of years with my lupus, bad knees, severe osteoarthritis, you name it.
Right.
Um, I look at, am I going to be stuck on a class 3 narcotic for the rest of my life, which means I will be addicted. And let's not play games with that. I've been on them for 10 years. Getting off a class 3 narcotic after 10 years is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
You have to look at your quality of life, not just the quantity. I might live another 5 years, but if I'm going to be miserable, why bother?
Right. That's the
And
thing.
that's the other trade off. You're taking all of these chemicals into your body. There are effects. Tylenol attacks your liver. Ibuprofen, any of your NSAIDs are going to tear your stomach up. No matter how good you are, you're going to end up with stomach lining issues or bleeding ulcers or pockets in your intestines bleeding because of the NSAIDs that you have to take.
Right.
We're not even talking about getting addicted yet to the class 3 or class 2 narcotics that you're on. Then you've
Yeah.
got, how do you feel when you're taking them? I will be honest with you. I would time it. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't take it in the morning before I left for work because I had to drive to work. You get to work, you're barely functional. You get in and you pop it. You know you've got 45 minutes because you've not eaten yet. It's a half hour if you eat. You got 45 minutes that you have to fake it to make it.
Yeah.
How clear is your mind? Now I do my numbers all day long, so don't even ask me. I
Right.
I'm crunching numbers all day long. I have to be sharp as a pin. I've got to be on my game because I'm being asked to run numbers. What's the best way to do this? How much is this? What was the cost on that? What's the checkbook at now? You have to have a clear head. You cannot have, I have allergies really bad. I cannot have Benadryl head and do my work.
Right. Right. Right.
So you start
Same.
making
I have horrible allergies.
deals with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Tonight I'll take my allergy medicine when I go to bed so I can breathe at night. I'll
Right.
function in the morning. I'll get through the day. If you're awake, you can get through the day.
Right.
Okay, I take my meds when I get to work. If I'm having a rough day at work, stress causes pain. Let me just add that in there. End
Yeah.
of the month.
And then if the
Well,
weather's bad, forget
we're
about
not even going to go into that yet. No, I literally picked myself up and moved down tier to get away from the cold so I could actually function. Because there
Yeah.
would be a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks in the winter, I couldn't get out of bed.
Mm.
Could not function as an adult.
Yeah.
So when you look at all of that, I mean, and we're aging. America is aging, guys. We can't walk away from this one. We can't, do the lipo and make it work. We're getting
Mhm.
old.
Yeah.
Do we want to go into our older years miserable and in pain? Or do we want to take away some of that pain and at the same time alleviate your mood a little bit?
Right.
De-stress yourself because goodness gracious knows we're stressed all out of whack as it is.
Yeah.
I don't understand alcohol and cigarettes being legal when this isn't.
Especially what's really, really sad to me because being an empath and just being super sensitive, like I can't watch the news. I can't watch the news. It's too much for me. I just can't do it. If there's something going on, I mean, it's an inside joke with my family. I tell my dad if at the time, if North Korea is blowing us up, you got to give me a call because I don't watch the news. I don't watch the news. It's just too depressing. I can't handle it. It's just so. It's like if you can't take care of yourself, it's just really sad to me. It's sad, like you said. And I'm not by any means saying people that are on these pills or prescriptions are wrong. Absolutely not at all what we're saying. I am coming from a personal place because I have experienced that in my life, not myself, but in my family, my husband's family. His first wife passed because of that, and I raised her daughter. And we went through a really hard time with that. And so I come of play from a personal, I'm not at all saying that it's wrong, but that's why I feel so strongly about it, because I have firsthand seen what opioids has done and has destroyed lives. And it's incredible to me that and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and that's why I'm such a huge advocate, I think, deep down, because I've seen it. I've dealt with that trauma. I've been very close to that, and it's just incredible to me because I know that these doctors see it. These medical examiners see it every time there's a DUI, a drunk driver hits and kills a family, but they're surviving. How that happens every time, and it's just like, but statistically, a couple years ago, and I'm sure it's worse now, um, opioids cause more deaths than crack, heroin, and meth combined. And it's okay as long as a doctor prescribes it. Meanwhile, zero deaths from cannabis, it's a no brainer. I don't, it just, and the crazy amount of money that the states make from it, again, a no brainer. Like, not
Yeah,
only,
like I said, Colorado is in the black, and they were like shocked because they didn't
yeah,
think that
and like,
people were going to actually pay that much.
right.
And
And like people and like there's restaurants in California that have like there's like cannabis restaurants and it's like a thing. Can you imagine if we had that like nationally? Could you imagine being able to go anywhere and how beautiful this country is? We have so many great things that we can see, landscapes and different cities and different, we're a little world in and of itself, different climates and
yeah,
everything. Could you imagine if you had that freedom everywhere you went in this whole entire beautiful country? I mean, it's just crazy to me how they're not seeing dollar signs in their politicians. It's like, hello.
hello. Yeah, we thought they went hand in hand.
It just go, but like I said, listen, I understand. I am very pro Eastern and Western. I believe it's a marriage. Okay. It's absolutely a marriage. That's not at all what I want to make that very clear. Um, but the opioids, I mean, it's all over the news. It's not a secret. This country, we are in a crisis.
Yes, we
I
are.
mean, on the opioid. So it's like, and there's so many. I'm a part of so many cannabis groups on Facebook, and there's so many people that are get off of opioids because of cannabis, because it treats what they need to be treated.
But wait a minute. The movie said that that's a gateway drug.
Right.
Right.
That's the thing. And and it goes into a whole other thing of like, society. I mean, there's a whole other ball of wax of what you have to deal with being, a
I
can
think
mom. It's a whole
I think
stigma.
it's going to be a few years, but I think we're finally starting to wake up. And I think part of what is happening as America ages, and let's be honest, we are now at an unusual situation where we have more elderly than we do have young people. We're at a tipping because many people are delaying having children or they're just not having children.
Right.
Where before you had 10 or 12 kids to help on the farm, now you're deciding even if you're going to have one.
Right.
So the aging population is like, okay, now it's our time.
Hmm.
We want to enjoy, we're living longer, we really are, but what is our quality of life?
Right.
If I'm going to live 5 more years and I'm going to be miserable those 5 years, it's not worth it. But if I'm going to live 3 years and you can give me something that's going to make me happy for 3 years, well, then that's a whole nother issue. And I
And
think
it really has helped me immensely with like stress and anxiety and depression. And, there's a whole stigma of being a consumer and being a parent, a huge stigma
I've
that,
heard that one before too.
oh,
Well, it's funny. In Florida, of course, in Florida, we have a huge elderly population, let's be honest with you. And the joke in Florida, and there's several, but one of them is that, there's nothing to do but drink after you're retired. What do you do when you're bored? You drink. And I'm thinking, oh, that's great. They're all going to be, alcoholics. And when you look at that, that's legal. That's okay. You can do that because it's legal. So you can go out and stay drunk every day, and that's okay. And I do know people who do that.
right. And then you go back to the DUIs. And you know what's funny to me, and I'm sorry not to cut you off, but just before I lose it, because I may. What's funny to me, you talk about how alcohol is legal. The another thing that they don't talk about is they'll say, oh, if it's legal, a thing that I think like Polk County Sheriff, I somewhere in Florida here was
Judge
on,
Brady.
was on the news whenever we're trying, because we're pushing it to be recreational, but it wasn't on the ballot this time. But he was like on the news talking about how now either because they're grasping at straws, honestly, at this point, about how the DUIs and how there's going to be all these fatalities if they make it legal. It's like how about the DUI alcohol? Hello, because people are not dying from DUIs because they're driving around high.
Most
but
of them are alcohol.
yeah, and this is what I was going to say to your point, going back to the stigma, especially in the parenting community. Wow, it's bad. It's a war. It really is. It's so the thing is that are advocates, and there would be like Canadad or Canamom. There's little nicknames in the social media and stuff like that. But the fight is to make and it'll be like a picture of a cute girl with a bong or a joint or whatever, and it's or even not the picture, just the words, but it cycles in all these circles, all these canna parenting circles that I'm in on Facebook. And the whole fight really is, when it comes to the parenting aspect, is you know making this as okay as mom needs a glass of wine, because that is the norm. You hear that all the time, that oh, mom just needs a glass of wine, like that's the joke, or
Yeah. Or you're having a 2 mojito day at work.
right. And listen, I like my glasses of wine, again, not knocking it, but the point is, when you are a parent and a consumer, it's also a whole nother level that you have to deal with, because it's the stigma of going back to it being a drug. Oh, so your mom's a drug addict? No, my mom takes medicine that comes from Mother Nature. It's all in how you look at it.
Right. They don't talk about the Valium or whatever else, mother's little helpers, as they used to call them back in the day, to
Right.
get mom through the day.
Or how many people have fallen asleep behind the wheel because they've been high on pain pills? Yeah.
We won't even discuss that, the pain pills or the alcohol. I mean, alcohol changes your whole perspective and your whole function when you drink. That's why you get the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde people. Some people who drink become violent. Some people who drink become very mellow. You do lose a lot of inhibitions when you drink. So, things come out, yet that's legal.
Yeah.
And that's okay. but you can get addicted to that. I have honestly, and I'm going to be real frank with you. I don't know anybody who's addicted to marijuana in that sense. You may get accustomed to the high and want that, but you
Right.
don't become quote unquote physically addicted to the drug.
Right.
Alcohol, you become physically addicted to.
You do.
Be honest about it. It's
Oh yeah. Because if it was so easy, they wouldn't have rehabs.
I exactly, and you wouldn't
Yeah.
have to go to them 3, 4, 5 times.
Right. But I mean, but that's the thing is like, and what we fight for as, advocates and especially parents, there's a really,
Um,
really cool cannabis parenting community on TikTok. It's a really big community. It's really, I mean, usually any community on TikTok is pretty encompassing and, positive and, but it's big. But it just going on all facets here. So you have like the, so we're talking about both sides, right? So look at the money, look at the health aspects, and then you have the ridiculous, DUIs and the all this. Like if I'm high, the last thing I'm wanting to do is go to drive. And now with Uber Eats, if I want Taco Bell, they can come to me. It's like
exactly.
no one wants to, you know, it's just it's all political. Like I said, hopefully we keep moving in the right direction. I mean, obviously that's what everyone wants. Um,
It's just funny. Years ago, you had herbs, and that's all you had. Then we found out how we could extract things from the herbs. We made pills.
right.
That's all we had.
Mhm.
Now we're going back. The doctors are telling you, no, the pills aren't good anymore because the addiction and all the other consequences. So now we're going back to herbs.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's
And
like,
more natural things like we've talked about, like meditating and journaling and
and
being
using
healthy. That's all
echinacea
part of it.
tea for your immunity, using chamomile to
Yeah.
calm that down a little bit and get your stuff together, because sometimes you just need that 2 minutes. And we've all
Yeah.
been moms, and it's like,
Because
wait till I take
because
my coat off before you talk to me.
because at the end of the day, it's just a plant. Like, what are you so afraid of a plant for? It's
I mean, if you're going to look at it like that, look at belladonna. Look at
right.
digitalis. Digitalis saved people. Foxglove saved lives. It still
Oh yeah.
does,
Mm-hmm.
but it can take your butt out too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's anything out there. There's always going to be a pro and a con.
And it's not for everyone. And we're not trying to sell you on cannabis. We're just, I'm an advocate,
I
so
think
I'm
we need to
naturally
get
going
enough information for you
yeah.
as an individual. If you're fed one line, okay, come on, let's face it, Reefer Madness, Cheech and Chong. I mean, I can remember the it was a show, I think it was called Emergency or something. It was on many years ago, and it was one of the first like
Emergency
fighter
911
type.
with William Shatner.
No,
Emergency
that wasn't
911 in the
William
90s.
Shatner. It was
Uh,
before him. It was with Randolph Mantooth. I remember
oh,
him.
yeah.
So they had a scene in it where the two adults were high on pot, and this was done in California. Okay, and
Of
this
course.
was in the, I'm going to say the
That
80s.
was also the other stereotype.
Right. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. And the reason I remember, my father was still alive and he was a firefighter.
Mhm.
And they were talking about, they found the kid floating in the tub because the parents were high on pot and didn't know where the kid was. I'm sitting
Yeah.
there going, let's exchange that for alcohol, and I'll believe it.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it. If you've been to a party and there's been someone passed out drunk, they're not getting up.
Right. And that's
It-
what I'm not being, I mean, let's face it, in the 60s, it was drugs, sex, and rock and roll. That was
right,
our
right.
theme. And that's
Yeah,
what we truly believed.
yeah,
Um, and granted, we all did crazy stuff back then. Um,
sure.
Times have changed. And now we've got to start looking at our aging bodies. We got to start looking at where we are going to go from here. We've made wonderful strides in medication and actually medicine as a whole, where we are
Mhm.
living longer. We're fighting off. I mean, not many people die from the Black Plague anymore. Not many people
Right.
die from smallpox or polio.
Polio, right.
Now, my older stepsisters both had polio as children. So I
Hmm.
can tell you about polio and post polio syndrome, which is a
Hmm.
real thing. So you sit here and you look, we've gotten rid of all of this. So we're living longer because we're not dying of all this other stuff.
Right.
So what are we living longer for?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a crazy history. I mean,
It is. And like I tell everybody, because I get a lot of questions about it. My thing is, you have to look at the facts. You have
right.
to get enough knowledge. If you're getting your information from one source, you're wrong.
Oh yeah, and we've
You're
said that
wrong.
on the show before.
Yeah.
You
You
gotta check your
to
resources.
really, really
Check your resources.
get your
Yeah.
resources and get in and get the information. Start talking to people and not going down to the local pot shop and talking to them. Let's talk to some doctors.
No.
Let's
Yeah.
talk to the psychiatrist.
And
Let's,
they're out there. There's a lot of medical doctors that are advocates that know what they're talking about. That are.
and a lot of doctors are actually letting you go back. If you see a doctor and he ends his name and has OD afterwards, OD means he's more holistic. And he's
Osteopath.
taken extra classes and he understands that we're treating mind, body, and soul, and that there are other things out there besides what the traditional medical community advises.
Right.
Um, and I'm going to tell you a silly story. My son was little, he got sick, could not get the Pedialyte in him to save my soul. So, as a mom, your kid's dehydrating, you're going to come up with something. So, the plan was he really likes orange soda, the Fanta orange soda.
Mm-hmm.
So, I poured half Pedialyte, half Fanta soda. I put the cap on, gave it to him, and he drank it. So I called the pediatrician and said, like, look, this is the only way I can get fluids in this kid today without an IV. And he went,
Right.
what soda was that? And how much did you add? I want to write this down so I can give it to another mother if they need it. And that was my first inkling that there are medical people out there that actually listen to what you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it became my goal to find them
Right.
for me and for my kids, because now I had a doctor who, if I said, okay, he has low blood sugar, what do I need to do in the morning? You meet him either with a peanut butter sandwich or a glass of orange juice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, who knew? And then they work with you. Okay, well, if that doesn't work, try this. So there are the doctors out there, there is the medical community out there that you can ask questions of. But I always tell everybody, don't just listen to them, listen to the naysayers too, because
Yeah.
they have valid points as well.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing is, you can go. The thing is, do your research. I mean, it's cannabis topic is out there enough that you can do your research. There's topics out there. There's been enough research to where it started to become legal, in places, and it's progressing. But the point is, do your own research, and if you decide that it's something that you think would benefit you, then you go to your doctor. But don't let your doctor necessarily convince you one way or the other just because it's that one person, because it's so hard to tell whether or not their intentions are right, because unfortunately it is such a cash game with the I mean, and that's why big pharma is, what it is. And I have seen those checks that doctors get from insurance companies. And so I mean, it's a whole thing, and it doesn't mean that your doctor's bad. I mean, it's just the business that they're in, and it's the
And
business
two,
side of
it's just like getting a second opinion for anything you're having done. They tell you most now require a second opinion for surgeries and things of that nature. So go out there and educate yourself. There's enough material to look at, but you have to take in who you are, what you do, how you need to do it, and you have to have the support of the medical community to do it. And if that means changing doctors or just listening to what's going on, I would never, and I have a holistic healthcare certification, I would never tell you to stop taking your medicine. I would never, my BS in psychology does not allow me to tell you to stop.
it.
But
Yeah.
by the same token, I'm going to tell you flat out, you got to look at what you got to do for you. What works for me may not work for you. I'll be
Right.
honest, just like any drug, you have people who take a Benadryl and they're wound up for 2 weeks,
Oh, I
and
know.
others who even sniff the Benadryl bottle and they're out for 4.
Oh
So
my.
it's with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I just want to hit real quick. We did say we would do a quick Beltane, so we're going to hit real quick. Just few little things on here because Beltane's around the corner. One of the
Oh, real quick before we move on. So next week we're going to be hitting more on the medical. So we're going to pick back up still on cannabis, but medical. And if you are at least an outer court member of the Carillion tradition, I have an order, which is the Order of Hersini. Hersini is the Sanskrit word for cannabis, and basically it's a group. We have fun, we do funny weed memes sometimes, but we also share a lot of good information with each other. About we share tons of articles. I share really awesome recipes. It's just a fun group, and we talk about different ways that you can incorporate cannabis in your magical life, and also discuss educational things. Like that's where I shared the TED talk about the endocannabinoid system. So you'll have to, I think I posted that before you joined. So you'll have to go back. I'll tag you in
go
it.
back and look
But
at.
but yeah, and we talk about the history because it's also part of the spiritual and magical aspect of it. So, and medicinal. So just outer court minimum for the tradition, and you can find it on Facebook. It's searchable, and it's Hursini. So Order of Hersini.
And
I think.
seriously, it's a place to look to start getting some information. You can ask questions on the forum, and people will answer you. Usually, those with a little bit more knowledge will answer you, so you don't get something like off the wall.
And
And
you do not have to be a consumer to join. It's just an advocate, or just, you
it's
don't
just
have
like
to
any of
partake.
our other groups. You don't
Right.
have to particularly be of that to join it. But if you
Right.
just want some information, it's a really great place to start. And it's a good place to get some basic information to where you can start working on your own.
Yes, and you can search the group, but it is a private group. So I do want to make that point. It is a private group. So no one can see that you are in that group unless they are also part of that group. So no one on Facebook can see if you're in that group, because I know that's important to some people. So I wanted to put that out.
Because in some places, your job can depend upon it.
Yes. And also it's still illegal in quite a lot of places. So,
I think they could figure that one out already.
right.
It's not that hard. But Beltane is coming up. Now, We are familial tradition, which means we have children in our tradition, which means we allow them at ritual. Now, we all know what Beltane is. We're not even going to play the game here. If anybody has watched Camelot from the 1960s, yes, and has heard the lusty month of May, you know what we're talking about. We're going to leave it there because we're still what, PG? Okay. There are
So we can talk about it.
There are just so many things involved with Beltane. You are going to hear some of the wildest stories. I love to tell people to watch the 1975 Christopher Lee version of The Wicker Man because they talk about Beltane.
Yeah.
If you watch Sabrina, the dark one that's on Netflix, oh yeah, she did a whole thing. And let me tell you, somebody did their research. I was
They
very
did.
impressed.
I was really impressed too. Same thing with their Lupercalia.
Yes, they were like
Very
on
impressed.
point.
Yeah.
I'm kudos, guys.
Because normally, I don't get me wrong. I love all the witchy shows, regardless. Like Charmed, The Craft, Bewitched. I'm all over all of it. Practical Magic, Hocus Pocus. But I still, what Hollywood can do. So I just loved that was at least accurate. I was like,
On point. I was like, oh my
yeah.
God. And if you watch The Wicker Man, that is very much on point about Beltane. And it's not said in the movie, but it is Beltane because they do have the girls leaping over the fire and those kinds of things involved in the fertility ritual, which is what Beltane is all about. Now, fertility, great right. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about the little guys. So you've got a little one at home and you got to figure out something to do. Now, not everybody has the availability to have a big yard out in their backyard. Some people live in apartments. Some people just don't have a big yard. But you know what? No matter where you're at, you can actually do a maypole because you can do it on a cake.
That's so cute. I like that.
Now, if you want to get really super fancy, do each cupcake.
That's really cute.
Now, if you got a dancer in the group, and I know you got a little dancer because Fiona
Yes, I
gave
do.
her booty. Okay, then what you do is you make.
The ribbon.
You take the ribbon from the dollar store, you take a dowel, you tie it on, and they can go out in the yard
Ribbon
and
dancers.
let it go all over the yard.
Oh yeah.
And
And Haley used to be in ballet and tap too when she was Fiona's age.
right. And I mean, that's an easy way to do a maypole as well as these are.
I have that saved. I know.
I love it. It was so cool. Now, explaining this to your little one can be dicey at best. So you want to incorporate a few little things. And I've done my research. My children are grown. My grandchildren are almost all grown. And I have the great grands. So we're imparting our knowledge onto them. So when it comes to Beltane, back when my kids were little, it was very difficult because there was nothing to really, how can I say, nicely say what Beltane was other than, yeah, this is something mommy and daddy do. And that's the last thing you want to tell a kid because they're right on it at that point.
Right.
So you want to do something fun. Oh, yeah, they want to see what did mommy and daddy do until they're a teenager and then they know and then they run. And I am that parent. So I was looking through some different ideas because so much has changed. I mean, so much more is out there now than when my kids were little. And I have to admit, I'm in love with the puka pages and have been for years.
Me too. Haley had her birthday printed in one of the editions, and she just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the puka pages are an excellent source for all
Yes,
things pagan and all things children. They
absolutely.
give you, I mean, they give you a grown-ups page. Trust me, read the grown-ups page. You might learn a few things because they do an excellent job of doing a grown-ups page so that you understand.
Hmm.
Then the stories. I love the stories. Now, my children were too small. This was not out when they were little, but some of
Right.
my grandchildren have actually sat down with me and done the puka pages
Hmm.
because they were out when they were smaller. So they have the stories that you can tell. Now, the stories, they always have 2 or 3 stories for each age level. So you get to pick what is best for your child, where they're at. And the stories, of course, are very, very well written. They're fun. They're little things you can do. We have one, the little Beltane cakes, which was so cute. And then, of course, we have the best, the coloring pages.
Yes.
And then you have crafts. And these crafts they did, and I tell you what, I love these. They did ankle bracelets and stuff like that.
Oh, those are cute.
You got to see this little girl.
Oh, that's cute.
Now, they also talk about, now you have to understand, some of our holidays are Celtic in nature and some are not. Some are from different parts of the world. We tend to fall into more the Celtic around here. And so this one, I thought this was totally awesome. This had a letter from Scotland and it was by Fiona Tinker, who wrote a
Oh,
little Dear Little Witches, and it explains a little bit about Beltane. But you know what they're using are, and you love this. It's the seals. The
oh, that's
seals
cute.
were actually selkies at one time. So for those of
Yes.
you who don't know where the selkies come from and the undines and all this good stuff, read the puka pages. And you
Yeah.
get a little letter from Scotland and the seals. So they talk about the selkie and explain it a little bit. Oh, this is my favorite picture out of it.
I know. I love that.
And then, of course, we have an offering to the fairies. Do not forget to feed the fairies; they will remember. And then you have the maypole pictures, and they show you how to do the maypole. And if you're able to do it, maypoles are awesome, and it's a way to get the kids out, and it's a lot of fun. But again, if you don't have the ability to do that, the cakes, the little cupcakes, I thought were adorable with
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Also, it doesn't necessarily have to be a maypole; it can be making rose water or lemon
Hmm.
water. You know, you have to understand when you go back behind what is behind the holiday. We know the holiday because we're adults. We know what
Right.
we do. But for a small child, it's a little bit harder. Now, the other thing I thought was really wonderful. Now, this is the Puka pages from 2015. I'm not even going
Hmm.
to tell you why I have those. But this had runes. Talk about runes. And Jimmy learns about medicine and teaches Isabel. And Isabel is a hedgehog. Let me just tell you that. Okay.
It's so cute. I love
Isabel
Puka
is a hedgehog.
pages. Yeah.
And they do the whole thing. And then, of course, they have, I'm sorry, my favorite is the read along with the pictures. Uh,
Yes.
because we
Pictures.
used
That's
to
what I
do.
was going to say.
Yes, with the grandchildren, because
Yeah. I
when we
love it.
got to the picture, you'd point it out and then somebody would say what it is. So it's a fun way to do it, but it also encompasses the flowers, the gardening, and those things. Now, you've got to remember fertility just doesn't mean sex. Okay,
Right.
I know you're disappointed. Sorry. But fertility encompasses all parts. I know. I get really frustrated with that myself at my age, of course. But the ribbon wands are wonderful to make. There's 7 really easy activities to do with your kids. The ribbon wands. You can plant something, starts planting something because there again, fertility. You're explaining how the water, the dirt, the sun, the air all make the plant grow.
Right.
So, and you can incorporate that in anything. Um, you can make May baskets, which are nothing but taking your Easter baskets and lining them with flowers.
Oh.
Have a May basket. I mean, and if you circle them with flowers, you can put food items in it and take it down to your local food bank.
Oh, that's sweet.
So that's a nice way to do it. Now, we all know the fairies have to be fed. I do that in every ritual. I am very passionate about that. I've lost my keys more times than I care to talk about. So, you always do just a little fairy thing for the kids. And if you can get them, you can actually, and this blew my mind. We stopped at the dollar store the other day, and I'm in there just hunting because I love the dollar store. They
Right.
actually have garden fairy stuff that you can buy to make your fairy garden. We're talking
Really?
little gnomes. We're talking little watering cans. We're talking little gates at the dollar.
Oh, I'm gonna have to take Fiona because we just got her a fairy garden
You're going to have to hit the
that
dollar.
came with dirt and flowers and a unicorn and the whole thing.
Oh, they've got it at there. And I was really amazed. And I saw that. And I thought, even if you just take a little clay pot and
Right.
let them decorate it, a little
Oh
hot
yeah.
glue, you're done. Now, Beltane, in many parts of Northern Europe, you would take your herd of cows or whatever, and you would go between the fires, and that was supposed to burn off bad stuff. Well, I would not suggest doing that in your house at any point in time. Now,
Right.
it's called leaping over the bonfire, and you see it in the movie The Wicker Man, where the girls leap over the bonfire. It's a purification ritual. We do the same thing when we call our quarters, and we use the smudging for our quarters.
Right.
It's fire and air. So you can actually do a little bonfire. Now, the suggestion here was made to put a candle on a table and dance around it. But you can always get the candles that you turn on, the little ones at the dollar store.
Yeah, the little LEDs.
LEDs, I couldn't think of
Yeah.
it. Take a little LED, put it in the middle of the floor, and you can jump over the bonfire.
Yep. And
There,
that's actually what we do a lot with the scouts, with Crystal Cavaliers, with the Corellian tradition. We use a lot of those in the kids' rituals. For the younger kids, we'll have, and it's all because it's all about intention.
right, and it's a fun thing to do. They get to leap and jump and act a fool. You put a couple of them down there. You can make a fake. Now, I was in BSA for umpteen million years. We had always someone had a fake fire campfire.
Right.
You hot glue the sticks, and you got the little thing in there that turns that makes it look
Yep.
like a flame. Yeah, you plug it into the wall. You can jump over that. So that's kind of something. The other one is called a rainbow hat. And what it is, it's you go to get some ribbons, you go to the dollar store and you take a paper plate and you just make a ribbon hat. So
Oh, that's cute.
take the paper plate, make it as the hat, tie it on, and you can make your little, and actually you can take one of the kids and make them the maypole and
Oh,
dance.
that's cute.
So I look at a lot of fun things to do with the kids and explaining, because sometimes some of our rituals are very in depth, and they
Yeah.
are because it's kind of like a Dionysian mystery. It's taking the layers away and understanding what you can understand. With a little guy,
You got
planting
to keep it
something,
interesting.
yeah, and it's really hard to explain sexual aspects to a younger child. But if you
Right.
can explain how nature works, and this
Right.
is the time when the flowers bloom and they can see it outside, um, things like the Puka page, Waverly Fitzgerald, there's a couple of them out there.
Also, littlepaganacorns.com is a really good one as well.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of you deciding who's going to teach your child, you or somebody else. And I've always said, if you don't teach them, somebody else will. And what do you want them teaching your child? So if
Right.
you want your child to have the ability to process and make choices, then you need to make yourself available for those choices for your child. So you
Exactly.
need to start with, if you're going to raise them pagan, and we will be having an upcoming show soon on pagans and the law and what you can and can't do. I'm very, very passionate about, what our rights are as pagans. I've been on the path over 50 years. I've lost jobs. I've had issues. I've had clashes with it. Um,
Right.
it's not fair. It's not right. And if you don't know the law, because I didn't at the time, I didn't understand it. And then finally, when I started understanding that I had the rights and I could do things too, it made it easier for me to pick and choose my battles because then I knew when I was right and when I wasn't.
Exactly.
So, for your children's sake, I recommend a lot of they have so many things out there now. I'm so envious because my
They do.
I know my daughter, my great grandson's 8, and my daughter can sit down with him and just, pull anything off the internet and go over it with him. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if I would have had that ability with you, I wouldn't be smacking you upside the head right now. Um,
My favorite pagan kids book that is out of print that I was able to score is a baby board book, like for a toddler. And it's called ABC Book of Shadows
yes. Oh, is
by
that a print?
Katie. Yeah, by Katie Leiden Oliveris. And look at the like A for altar, B for Beltane. And I love this because it's educational. So it'll say like A is for altar, your sacred place to pray. B begins Beltane, the fairies' balefire day. And it goes all throughout the whole like cauldron and east and the different elements and goddess and the horn god.
Now
I
you
could
could probably score that at a used book place like abookstores.com because they have a lot of
That's
old
where
books.
I did. That's where I was able to get it. Was a used bookstore online.
But those are the kinds of things, and I'm not being terribly naive, but a lot of adults don't understand a lot of the holidays.
Right.
Um, if you've never studied it, if you've never had the advantage of having a mentor or having someone older who can explain what the holiday is, I think that's a great idea to start. Just start with a children's book. It doesn't
It is.
hurt.
There's so many like really cool ones coming out. Like even from the time that Haley was little and now she's 12 and Fiona's 4. So even in just that span, there's been so much like pagan friendly kids books
Right.
that are just like
And
it's
there's books out
exciting.
there with the names like Raising Pagan Children. Um,
Right.
it doesn't hurt for you as the adult. If you're not sure, there is nothing wrong with buying a few of those kids' books and sitting down and
Oh
looking
yeah, absolutely.
because I mean, it gives you the basis and you can move on from there. We're fortunate that we do have mentors, that we do have a wonderful school, and we do have people who are willing to answer your silly questions when you have them. And
Yes.
I really push that because um, our spiritual path is our own, but there's many things that we do together. So
Yes.
even though we're walking it yourself, it's your path. Nothing beats getting together with a group of friends and celebrating whatever it is. And
Yeah.
if you can bring your children, you don't have to get a babysitter. You don't have to deal. You just bring your kids with you and you sit down and you have a really fun time. You've celebrated the holiday. You've explained it to the children. You understand it. Ooh.
Right.
And later on, if the adults want to do their own ritual, then put the kids to bed. You've got time to do your ritual.
Right.
But in that same vein, you need to understand what you're teaching your children.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
jump on those Puka pages, jump on Waverly Fitzgerald. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. Pick
Yeah.
up some of those kids' books. Let me tell you, I
They're
have
fun.
fun, and the kids' coloring books beat the
Oh,
adults' coloring books still.
yeah.
So find you a coloring book. If you have questions on holidays or don't understand them, please do not hesitate to jump on us and ask us about them. We try to do it. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about Beltane. and the adult version. Ooh.
Mhm.
And of course, we're going to do our cooking parts, and we'll have recipes up so that you can incorporate all that into your family fun as well as understanding the holiday. Now, we have illustration coming up on May 2nd, which is Beltane. We will not have a show. Instead, we will all be attending illustration, which is super, super, super awesome. Um, we will also have an auction. And we are so fortunate to have Mike Neal with us. Mike Neal is our auctioneer who is absolutely extraordinaire.
Mhm.
He is super good. And
He's
we
awesome.
also have some of our items up for sale on the auction. So I caution you guys, when it goes live, jump quick, jump fast, get those prices up. There will be handmade items. There are items where people are donating things that they might have. Let me tell you, you collect shit. I have
Oh,
20 chalices. Trust and believe I've been getting rid of some of them.
and there's always really cool stuff. Like people will donate stuff that they've just had for a while, and it's just like such a treasure to someone. And you're like, oh my! And sometimes there's books, but and handmade things. And so we're gonna have two mugs and two T-shirts for the show. So you'll have to check those out. And as always, if you have any show questions or topics or teas that you want us to talk about, you can always hit us up at Tea Time with Mother and Crone, and also our YouTube channel, Tea Time with Mother and Crone, or our email, teatimemc@gmail.com. And we definitely appreciate all of you. But I'm excited to talk about more about Beltane next week.
And I'll tell you what, we're going to let you in a little secret. We've got a couple giveaways that are coming up, but we're going to tell you next week how you might be able to cash in on some of them. So stay with us, listen, and you might actually be able to cash in on a t-shirt or a mug. So keep us listening and really check into some of the awesome things that are going on in the Corellian tradition. Jump on that Corellian membership hub. There is so much going on.
Yeah,
Rituals, times to do things, groups getting together, drum circles. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you what's going on right now. There's so much stuff. But
absolutely.
and this is the time to do it. Some of the restrictions are being lifted, so please keep that in mind. Keep safety in mind at all times.
Right.
Anytime there's a Corellian gathering, it is always done safe with distancing, with masks and social things that we need to do right now. We're trying to keep the COVID down, but just check us out. Start looking at some of the stuff. If you can't get out, Lustration will be online. You can
Yes.
actually be there with all of us.
And go, you do have to register. So if you are interested, you go to corellianlustration.com, and it's CORRELLIAN. Some people always miss one of the two R's or
No,
L's.
but
So, and then you just register. I think it's 25 bucks
it's
donation
something
or something like
ridiculous
that.
with all the classes.
Yeah, workshops, and we're gonna have live performance from Cloud, and
Okay, now remember, guys, you got to get in on the live performance from Cloud because he's just getting back out to doing live performances. So let's make sure we say hi to Cloud
yes.
if you see him. And he's doing different genres of music now.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting because I know that he started on different genres, and rap was the newest venture. So it's gonna be cool. I'm excited. There's gonna be a ton of workshops, and then of course we have the big ritual on Sunday. So I work Saturday, so I'm really pissed about that. Like really pissed. I work every third Saturday, and my Saturday fell on Ostara, and it's falling on Beltane. And so yeah, I'm not happy, but at least I'll be able to catch up on the workshops, and I
I
won't
was just going to say
miss out on Sunday.
the perfect thing about it is you can catch the workshops. I used to hate I love doing the illustrations. I love doing those things, but it never failed. The workshops I wanted to take was always when I was teaching a class.
Right.
And it's like, but I want to sign up for it and I can't because I'm teaching. With
Yeah,
everything on Zoom, you can
exactly.
watch all of them. And I'm like,
You'll
oh,
be able to,
boy.
yep, you'll be able to go back. Absolutely. So it's really awesome. So you'll have to check it out and go there to register and check us next week.
And remember, you can sign up for our giveaway. We're going to give you more hints next week. We're just keeping it under wraps for right now. We want to see everybody back next week. Take care. Take care of yourself and check on that neighbor that you might not have seen in a day or two to make sure they're okay too.
Yep.
And
Bye.
we're off for another show. See y'all next week.